ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. What a fantastic job by the young people. Another round of applause, please. Well, we continue with fantastic performances by the young people because here is now time for Song Antigua by Rupert Blaze. Please enjoy.
As you will sail on by.
was a bit of a reserved round of applause. Perhaps we can do better than that, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, Armani and friends as we keep the pace moving in Super Prime. Absolutely. Another one, actually. Next up, Patricia Nicholas. Okay. We'll get there. Short commercial break. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Governor General, His Excellency Sir Rodney Williams, Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, Honorable Stedroy Benjamin, Attorney General of Antigua, Barbuda and Acting Prime Minister, Honorable Melford Nicholas, Minister for Information and Communications Technologies, ICTs, Utilities and Energy, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, Dr. Colin Young, Executive Director of the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, 5Cs, Professor Vibert Cambridge, Professor Emeritus, University of Ohio, Ms. Madeline Noland, President of the Advanced Television Standards Committee, Mr. Christian Porter, CEO of the Public Media Alliance, Mrs. Noreen Hoyt, widow of Mr. Harold Hoyt, Chair of the Local Organizing Committee, Mrs. Ername Brathwaite, MBE, and Mr. Brathwaite, CBU members and executives, ladies and gentlemen all, very good evening and a warm Antiguan welcome to you. Perhaps I need to stress on the warm. It is fantastic to have the entire regional media gathered here in this resplendence, gathered for this august occasion in August. Well, what better else? A warm welcome to the opening ceremony for the 54th Caribbean Broadcasting Union Annual General Assembly from the Royalton in Antigua. The audience is, by the way, looking quite fantastic, wouldn't you say? I wanted to give yourselves a round of applause for looking as fantastic as you are. And by the way, I've paid your narcissism fee, so no, you can be fine with that. Well, such is the power of Caribbean broadcasting, and such is the power of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, the CBU, that it has commandeered not just prime time, but super prime across the region for this showpiece event. Yes, we are on live. Mr. Campbell, Keith Campbell, good to see you, sir. We're on live across the region for this showpiece event. And not just because, by the way, the media executives are here and participating, so they commandeer their time, but because this is really a blockbuster event and needed to be on at this time in super prime. It's this occasion each year when media executives gather, ladies and gentlemen, for limited commercial interruption, for discussions, awards, induction into the prestigious Hall of Fame, sharing ideas, pondering the flux in which we operate, while understanding that truth is absolute, there are no alternative facts, and that we as the fourth estate, the media, are at the vanguard of our society's evolution, because a free press is the oxygen of democracy. Well, even though it is the one time that the CBU gathers every year, it is far from the one time that it is active, because it is batting right throughout the year, piling up runs for its members, the growing membership across the region. And by the way, I wonder why I use a cricketing analogy to talk about batting and piling up runs. Perhaps the CBU would have a few tips, Mr. Campbell, for a certain team, which we will not call. By the way, I hear they played yesterday and won. Won't call their name though. Ladies and gentlemen, we will return to more entertainment, but for now, it is my pleasure and my privilege to be joined by, here on the podium, by the President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union and Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the RGR Gleaner Communications Group in Jamaica, Dr. Claire Grant. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the finest media practitioners, a fierce competitor, In another life, we competed against each other vigorously. I always thought, Mr. Parker, that I won, I had the edge. She might think differently. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Dr. Claire Grant.
Good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Master of Ceremonies, great competitor. We spoke this evening. Happy you are, and happy I am that you are happy. Honorable Stedman Benjamin, Acting PM, Attorney General of Antigua and Barbuda. Honorable Melford Nicholas, Minister of Information and Communication Technologies, Utilities and Energy. President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Jean Leon. Dr. Colin Young, Executive Director of the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. Professor Vibert Cambridge, Professor Emeritus from the University of Ohio. Miss Marilyn Noland, President of the ATSC Inc. Mr. Christian Porter, CEO of the Public Media Alliance. Mrs. Noreen Hoyt, widow of Mr. Harold Hoyt. Chair of the Local Organizing Committee. I just paused to say here, Erna May Brathwaite, who has kept all the CBU heads above water and left us with little to worry about. And CBU members and executives that are in the audience. Ladies and gentlemen in the Royalton Convention Center and audiences across the Caribbean region, good evening to you all. A year ago, I joined you virtually for my first ever address to the CBU as president. And why did I have to do that? Well, we hadn't met for 2 years because of COVID. And then when we decided that we would meet, since COVID was over, COVID caught me, so I couldn't attend. But through the blessing of technology, I was able not only to deliver my remarks, but also to follow along with most of the 2.5 days of proceedings. But honestly, nothing beats being in person. And I'm very sorry that I wasn't at Tobago, Director Richard, and we have to get back there quickly sometime. 12 months later, though, I'm very thankful to be with you in person. It really means a lot. And yes, today we went out and we networked, and I could feel the energy that came because we are together as a people. I am proud as the head of an organization that has so much to celebrate. 54 years. And with members who continue over 5 decades, building on a legacy to work hard at informing, entertaining, and educating audiences despite challenges. As I and my directors have been reminded in recent months, the Caribbean media landscape continues its dynamic evolution because of technology. And this, I might add, is a global reality for all media. We are not unique in that. The impact of recent advances, for example, in artificial intelligence, fondly called AI, not sure why, but AI, is real. And this is a development that has implications for the business of media, public and private. And the business of media, I might add, is not only about the people who transmit, broadcast, print, but there are other stakeholders that artificial intelligence will also impact, or advertisers, for example. And we cannot overstate the significance of mis- and disinformation. While with the support of UNESCO, much work has been done by CBU members to build the capacity in media information and literacy, the battle is far from over. Closer to home, the policy and technological developments surrounding digital transition are very much front of mind, which is why the CBU dedicated half a day to discussions with regional and global policy partners, regulators, and technology providers earlier this year. Central to that webinar was providing a good business case and identifying Caribbean-relevant profit lines to this looming dynamic change. We thank ATSC, the Advanced Television Standards Committee, for their support in this important conversation. From the region, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago have both named ATSC 3.0 as the digital broadcast standard that they are embracing. And the future is filled with remarkable possibilities for us to embrace and understand and allow the business of media in the region to keep pace with what is happening globally. Overall, the continuing existence of legacy media is at stake. Our colleagues at the World Association for Christian Communication, WACC, have highlighted as ad revenue shifts to social media companies, commercial media outlets are struggling to survive. Their public interest function, informing citizens, holding those in power accountable, the fourth estate responsibility, which is so critical to democracy, creating space for diverse voices, is increasingly at risk. But along with the challenges have come successes. For many of the union's members, these past 12 months have included milestones, anniversaries, whose achievements are a testimony of their resilience. The Beat 104 of Starcom Network in Barbados celebrated 25 years in 2023. Television Jamaica of the RGR Gleaner Communications Group celebrated a quarter of a century in 2023, and Jamaica hit the milestone of 60 years of television broadcasting in this year. The Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas television service marked 45 years in late 2022. TTT Limited of Trinidad and Tobago celebrated its 60th anniversary in 2022. CBC's Channel 8 television channel, based in Barbados, also achieved its 60th year mark in 2023. So there is a lot that is happening that proves the resilience of our member states. We'll examine this history and consider the future of public service media, as well as the role of technology for media development during our conference day tomorrow, with the contribution of media historian Professor Vibert Cambridge, and by placing a lens on two of the towering figures of media who will be inducted into the Hall of Fame a little later this evening. We will also be joined virtually by new Director General of the World Broadcasting Union, Mondal Radio Digital. We'll also be joined virtually by the new Director General of the World Broadcasting Union, Ms. Rebecca Hansen, and the Chair of Digital Radio Mondal, Ms. Roxania Obergia. We're grateful to have here in person the CEO of Public Media Alliance, Christian Porter, as well as President of ATSC, Madeline Noland. Despite the severe body blows delivered to the Caribbean media by the economic downturn during this COVID-19 pandemic, the 37 members of the CBU, serving 20 countries and territories in the English, French, Spanish, and Dutch Caribbean, continue to perform invaluable service individually to their home jurisdictions and collectively to the region. For 38 years, the CBU has showcased the best of the Caribbean, produced content in what was known as the Caribbean Broadcasting Awards. Since the CBU expanded its membership to include print and digital media in 2015, it has extended an invitation to those media to join colleagues from television and radio as part of what is now known as the Caribbean Media Awards. And for this latest edition of the competition, all categories, except for the Content Creator Awards, were open to non-members. The invitation was overwhelmingly accepted, with 14 non-member organizations flooding our secretariat with entries. That was a good problem to have. And we experienced this year having a record of more than 350 entries to comb through. Even the online polling for the People's Choice category set record highs for votes this year. Tomorrow night at Government House, we will announce the winners in that and 34 other categories. We are very grateful to the partners who join us in encouraging excellence and relevance in our media output. Thanks to the UN Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, Sagicor, the largest single category sponsor in the history of the awards, supporting 14 categories, and the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, 5 Cs. These awards, this labor of love, which takes a lot of dedication and a great deal of resources, is a part of CBU's service to the region, of which we are extremely, extremely proud. And at this juncture, many of you might not know, but we must pause to pay tribute to our late Chief Judge for this year's awards, Miss Bev Sinclair, who passed suddenly in the middle of the deliberations for the awards. Our deepest condolences to her loved ones. The Caribbean Media Awards competition is also a significant part of CBU's capacity building strategy. After each edition, our judging panel provides detailed feedback on its findings and makes recommendations on how entrants can improve their performance when the competition is renewed. As I announced last year, CBU entered into a groundbreaking partnership with the University of the West Indies to offer graduate-level training to senior supervisors, managers, and CEOs of member organizations. The Caribbean School of Media and Communications, CARIMAC, provided tuition-free access to selected courses in Masters in Media Management to personnel from CBU member organizations. In return, the participating media houses are providing an agreed number of placements through their broadcast, digital, and print channels for MONA's academic offerings. The first 2 courses, which got going in September 2022, were Structure and Operations in Media, taught by Dr. Alpha Obikia, and Media Business Strategy, the course that I teach. 11 applications were received and approved from 6 organizations in Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Anguilla, and Jamaica. In January 2023, special admission to audit courses in Media Management Masters was offered once again to CBU personnel. And we are moving forward with a new cohort next month. And this, we might say, is a truly productive and sustainable partnership. Over the past 12 months, CBU has continued its tradition of short-form special theme training, including in climate change, disaster risk reduction, and media and information literacy, with the help of regional and international partners. CBU is also extremely pleased when through individual members and partnership with regional and international organizations, we can provide live and delayed coverage of major events such as the US Caribbean Summit in the Bahamas in May, or the Reggae Month activities in Jamaica in February, or the UN Climate Change Conference, COP27 in Egypt last November. Our members may not be all able to send individual reporters to produce dispatches, but through the joint efforts of the CBU, we ensure that Caribbean people are kept up to date on their own region. In many cases, we want to and strive to do more, and that is our ambition in the future. I particularly would like to thank, and the ministers are here, the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and the host broadcaster ABS, who barely after 1 year of joining the CBU in early 2020, refused to be daunted by the Herculean task of coordinating this assembly. Instead, led by Erna May, our stalwart local organizer chairman, ABS stepped forward and coordinated these 3.5 days of reflection, constructive criticism, collegial engagement, and recognition of achievement. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Antigua. I might add there are many of us who have done this event before, so we know exactly what it's about, and we're looking forward to, should I announce it? Belize next year taking on this task, and so we're going to be taking a lot of notes from Antigua. In closing, I would like to present to this audience the evidence of CBU's vibrancy and forward-looking nature, and introduce our new and renewed members. We started a little process last year, where we give our members pins. We're very excited about this. So everybody is not here in person, but we're going to announce who these new members are. New to the union is Union Newsroom Inc. of Guyana, and rejoining the union is the Grenada Broadcasting Network. We also want to recognize a couple of members who, while supporting us steadfastly, weren't able to join us last year when we inaugurated the process of issuing the pins. So, without further ado, I'm asking to come on stage from ZIZ in St. Kitts, Nevis, the chairman, Mr. Javon Liberd, and the general manager, Mr. Sajo Ingala. I get to do this for the first time, so I'm like really excited, just pinning people. I've met you. And from Belize Broadcasting Authority, Chairman Mr. Evan Tench, and Managing Director Mr. Mark Chavaria. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd really like you to give a round of applause to our new members. I would just like to indicate that we're stronger with numbers. We're small territories, but we are much stronger when we're together and we're linked. There's a lot more that CBU can do, and the larger we become, is the more forceful we will be. Thank you very much for joining, and we're really looking forward to the participation in everything that we will do moving forward. And with that, I will allow the program to move forward because I've taken up enough of your time. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you again, Antigua, and looking forward to the deliberations that we're going to have over the next 24 hours. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause, please, for Dr. Claire Grant, President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. You hear the passion with which Dr. Grant speaks. That's the passion that she brings to her job as leader of one of Jamaica's, if not Jamaica's biggest media conglomerates, certainly with television station, and also Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Gleaner, the RJR Gleaner Group. As I said, fierce competitor, and we know that you bring that passion to the CBU, so that's why the CBU is growing. Thanks again to the new members. Heartiest congratulations. Another round of applause for the new members, please. Our program moves on very quickly since we are in Super Prime. No, we're not taking any ads, Mr. Campbell, but still in Super Prime. So let's go now to this segment of our program, which is one of reflection, because we did say that we gather for 3.5 days of discussions, for camaraderie, for reflection on where we've come from and where we're, and to look ahead to the tasks at hand, the challenges ahead. We also stop to reflect on those we've lost along the way. And so we ask, ladies and gentlemen, that you help us to pause for in memoriam as we look back at those we've lost over the past year. Ladies and gentlemen, again, those who we've lost along the way over the past year, and I know that these are individuals all of you know very well. I must say, specifically in relation to Mrs. Odette Campbell, former general manager of the Grenada Broadcasting Network, the GBN, someone with whom I had very, very great conversations and interactions, with whom I co-hosted programs, and her memory, may her memory be a blessing, may all their memories be a blessing, and may we strive to ensure that we carry on their amazing legacy of passion, commitment, and sacrifice. We now move to another segment of our program, which is extraordinarily powerful. This one is paying tribute to not only sacrifice, but greatness and achievement. Because we're now going to be focusing on 3 women from Antigua and Barbuda who ensured that Antigua Barbuda continues to be in the international spotlight for all the right reasons. We're talking about Team Antigua Island Girls. If you haven't heard about them before, you haven't been keeping in touch with the newscast as you should. But these are intrepid women who would have crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and so good that they had to do it twice, so they took on the challenge of crossing the Pacific Ocean. Now, who does that? As in, crossing one ocean with all the perils and say, well, you know what? We like it. We're going to cross another ocean. Well, these women are absolutely special. They are unique. They are inspiring. They are inspirational. And we ask that you turn your eyes to the screen for a special tribute to Team Antigua Island Girls. Women who have crossed not one, but 2 oceans, all in the name of raising funds for amazing charities. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Make some noise for Team Antigua Island Girls. Yeah!
I think you have to be honest with yourself about what's pulling you somewhere. And I think when you are honest with yourself, you might surprise yourself. You don't have to do what's the status quo. I think whatever inspires you, dig a little deeper into that. And with that, dig some more.
We didn't let fear stop us from achieving our goals, and that would be my words of encouragement to you. Like, use your fear as fuel. Set any goal. I did not have any
The Pacific, we're back on the road again.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to hold the applause so that you can give us the applause as they join us on the platform, Team Antigua Island Girls in person. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please. I'll arrange autographs afterwards, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Again, showing what sacrifice and commitment and passion and love for country can do. Team Antigua Island Girls showing the way for all. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to continue with another powerful presentation this evening. We'll be hearing now from President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Jean Leon, Dr. Hyginus Leon. Call him Dr. Jean Leon for short. Dr. Jean Leon is the 6th president of the Caribbean Development Bank, the CDB, the regional development finance institution based in Barbados. With over 30 years of experience in economic development, Dr. Leon directed macroeconomic and financial policy support to government authorities in Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, and the Caribbean. A former associate professor, Dr. Leon worked with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, for more than 24 years, serving as mission chief in parts of Africa, the Bahamas, and several Gulf states. In addition, he was the senior resident representative in Jamaica and Nigeria. Dr. Leon served as Director of Research at the Central Bank of Barbados and the country economist at the CDB. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom, as well as Bachelor of Science, a degree in economics from the University of London. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome to the platform Dr. Hyginus Leon to address us, President of the Caribbean Development Bank.
Good evening. Protocols having been observed, let me just recognize Your Excellency Sir Rodney Williams, Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, and I think Lady Williams is here as well, and the two ministers with us, Honorable Stedroy Benjamin, Attorney General of Antigua and Barbuda and Acting Prime Minister, and also Honorable Medford Nicholas, Minister of Information, Communications, Technologies, Utilities, and Energy. And of course, President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. So let me begin by saying it is more than an honor and a privilege to deliver this keynote address at the 54th Annual General Assembly of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. I last addressed this august body at the 52nd Annual General Assembly, and at that time noted that 50 years was a good time to reflect on the agency's past and its potential evolution. I noted then a couple of observations. The first is that development, as we understood it at the CDB, is a holistic concept with solutions requiring internal integrity of the development ecosystem. In particular, at the bank, we have since elaborated on that basic concept that the core of our approach rests on two fundamental principles. The first is that the definition of a system must be complete and comprehensive. This embodies the linkages that exist across productive, social, institutional, environmental, and financial elements of our societies. So therefore, we cannot do development without recognizing and addressing the internal coherence of the whole system. The second point, in terms of principles, is that the dynamics of motion of the system must be such that system integrity has to be preserved over time. What exactly does this mean? It tells us that any distortions in the system will eventually compromise the integrity of the definition of the system, and consequently, its dynamics of motion. Therefore, the attainment of any desired trajectories of development must not only ensure coherence within the system at a point in time, but consistency of the systemic integrity over time. And I want to just pause a little here to make a particular point. That if you have a definition that is a circle, then that circle has a way of moving, which means it will roll. That's the dynamics of motion of the definition of a circle. And therefore, if you are looking to develop, and you only develop a part of that circle and not the entire circle, then what you end up with is a bump in that circle, and the bump distorts the definition. It's no longer a circle. It's a circle with a bump. And therefore, the dynamics of motion of the circle can no longer be a rolling motion. In fact, the bump will prevent it from rolling. It will stall. And I think that is what we observe in all of our economies. The definition, if it is not the definition of a whole, then if you move parts of it, you will not be able to get the dynamics that you want. And so that's a fundamental principle that we have embodied at the bank, and a principle that I'd like to be able to get back to as we talk about the role of communications. Why? Because separate from the first point that I made, that we need to have development of the whole as opposed to development of a slice, we made the very fundamental point 2 years ago that communications as a tool needs to be placed alongside mainstream development policies. In other words, it is not only economic and political policies. You need to have a communications policy if your definition of your economy is to be complete and comprehensive. And therefore, going back to the analogy of the circle, if we leave out a communications policy, then the motion, the dynamics of the economy will stall because you have left out a key component. And so that locates communication alongside development policies, both economic and social in terms of policies. So therefore, at that point, I posited that it is important to buttress the progress achieved in advocating for a free and active media with the responsibility to inform and help promote development by influencing the social psyche through the active management of content. So again, I'm going to pause. Influencing the social psyche is a part of the circle. The influencing of that social psyche is in large part a responsibility of the media. Therefore, all media have a responsibility to be part of the development ethos, because if they don't, the definition of society will be missing something, and if it is missing, what we expect of societies will not occur. And so that puts media, puts communications in a very important part of the broad economic, social, political policies of countries. So in essence, therefore, media, communications need to be at the forefront, supporting and promoting concepts of economic growth, stability, and social cohesion that are necessary for the continued development of our region. So that was a little elaboration on where we ended 2 years ago. And what I want to do today is to continue on that same theme of responsibility that I think the media needs to absorb, and anchor this keynote address in exploring the role of the fourth estate in the 21st century as guardians of social justice. And again, I want to just reflect a little. Social justice is one of the elements that will make up the entirety of the definition of society. And if it is left out, then it means we will not achieve what we need to achieve. And I am putting that responsibility of being a guardian of social justice on you, the media. So that is the topic that I want to explore today. So what exactly does social justice mean? As a starting point, we want to ask the following. If we accept that social justice exists when all people share a common humanity and therefore have a right to equitable treatment, support for human rights, and a fair allocation of community resources, if that's the definition we accept, wouldn't it be appropriate, therefore, to declare that there cannot be development of a nation without social justice of the people? There cannot be development of a nation without social justice of the people. And social justice promises change, increased access to rights and dignity, and maximization of the potential of a people. And that is, I think, what we want to be able to embrace, that if we genuinely want to have development, and we want to define this complete and comprehensively, we have to embrace social justice. Because social justice captures all of the elements that focus on people and the inequities that exist, and the role of doing this, which is partly to change the social psyche, falls squarely in the domain, the province of influence of the media. So the theme for social justice that I have chosen, we've done that because we believe it is fully aligned with CDB's advocacy of a holistic systems approach to development. That's the definition that we talked about. And at CDB, we advocate two key principles to underlie all policies aimed at influencing behaviors for advancing development trajectories. The two principles are sustainability, based on strengthening resilience, and inclusivity, based on narrowing inequities. So let me indicate what inclusivity means. Inclusivity for us encompasses social inequity, encompasses marginalized groups, encompasses disadvantaged communities, and we make the point that it's the persistence of these inequities that promote tensions that distort the definition of systems. And I think we don't have to think too far from recognizing where you have social inequities, tensions arise. Where you have marginalized groups, whether they be gender, small enterprises, poor communities, tensions arise. And when you have disadvantaged communities, tensions arise. As long as there are tensions, the definition of the economy cannot sustain itself. And therefore, development cannot occur. And the role that I am asking us to play here is how do we manage, how do we direct the social psyche through media such that we can help advance development and therefore place communications policy at the forefront of our development agenda. So consequently, addressing those inequities that I have spoken about across all parts of the system is essential to attain system integrity and social justice. So at the bank, we believe, therefore, that for us to achieve what we believe to be the goal that all of our economies should be looking for, a goal that we call resilient prosperity, and therefore social justice for all of our people, we can only do this if we deliberate on three key points. We have to act now. We must do so with urgency, agility, and with dexterity. And that's the way we think the development of the countries that are in the region, therefore, will actually occur. So my thesis, therefore, for today is that communications has and should play a strategic role in promoting social justice and therefore holistic development. Now, if you have not been told that you play such an important role, if you have not been told that, Madam President, I'd like you to adopt this and to say it out loud. Communications has a strategic role in promoting social justice. And without social justice, you cannot have holistic development. And without holistic development, you cannot have resilient prosperity. And without resilient prosperity, our people will not be satisfied. So that puts, therefore, the role of the media in the spotlight. Now, it is not uncommon for the media to be highly valued across societies. In fact, in some countries, it is enshrined in constitution. While it is under attack in many of those same countries, and media practitioners in some places are even branded as enemies of the people, I think we can be fairly safe in saying that we are not yet at that stage in the region. At the same time, I think COVID-19 has shown us that the inequities and inequalities among our populations are driving tensions that we see across the region. So there's one element of the social psyche, but there are also economic aspects, part of which arose from COVID that we need to be concerned about. A 2021 UNDP report states that regardless of decades of progress, Latin America and the Caribbean remain the second most unequal in the world, and countries in Latin America and the Caribbean exhibit high income inequality, higher than those in other regions at similar development levels. And therefore, that statement for me begs the question, so what are those inequalities and how can they be deconstructed and disseminated to a weary audience that is tired of living the reality of that statement? And of course, if you have inequities, as we've said, it has one simple result: tension. And tension means the definition of the system is at peril. And if the definition of the system is at peril, it cannot evolve. And so we will never achieve development unless we address the issue of inequities and the tensions that they promote, and hence the need for social justice. So let me make a point now to Secretary General, if you'd permit me. I want to invoke the African saying of Sankofa. Sankofa says that, one, we are connected over time, and second, we can benefit from looking back to go forward. And why am I invoking that phrase? Because the media landscape, as we know it, has always had courageous men and women who have placed their beliefs on the line and their very lives at risk to advocate for the rights and dignity of others. That's social justice that we speak of. 200 years ago, newspapers played a significant role in documenting the evils of slavery and advocating for its abolition. The British Library's Endangered Archives Project provides powerful, sorrowful reading on slavery alongside stories of heroic resistance. If we move to the US of A, we had Ida B. Wells, an enslaved woman who lost a suit brought against her for not giving up her seat. And she, in turn, used a pen name to mount a blistering crusade after 3 friends of hers were lynched. These were people that took the high ground of championing social justice. And so when we say there can be no development without social justice, the question now is who among us is going to take up that baton? Now, it's not only in the African and in the US space that this has occurred. Our region has had its fair share of journalists who covered stories often at the peril. And we can recall John Madeira, an icon in the media space, Caribbean media space, who worked with the BBC, CARICOM Secretariat, and UNESCO to further the cause of regional integration through the expansion of the news agency CANA, a Caribbean news agency that I think you're all familiar with, and the CBU. In fact, during the attempted coup in Trinidad in July 1990, Jones was held hostage and had the difficult task of telling the nation of the uprising with gunmen and other militants at his side live on air. In another instance, he led the resignation of the editorial team I've lost my line for a second. He led the resignation of the editorial team in a disagreement with government and publishers over freedom of the press. These are people that stood up for principle. Forward to 2019, we have Nicole Hannah-Jones and other writers from the New York Times and New York Times Magazine that launched a features project to observe the 400th anniversary of the first enslaved Africans to arrive in the then British colony of Virginia, what's called the 1619 Project. Despite some historical inaccuracies, the project was conceptualized to address social injustice. As Hannah-Jones told National Public Radio in November 2021, every American child learns about the Mayflower, but virtually no American child learned about the white lion. The white lion being the slave ship that brought the slaves to Virginia. Now, why are we actually making that particular point? Is because Hannah made the statement that omission is symbolic of how history is shaped by people who decide what's important and what's not. And that erasure is equally a powerful statement. You are the custodians of what is important and what is not important, what could be erased and what ought not to be erased. So today, we believe we are at the point in history where collectively we need to decide what's important for our future, that social justice that we speak of, and how do we share this message to grow? How do we revive the spirit of the pioneers that I spoke of? And how do we become, another African phrase, Ubuntu? The Ubuntu Africa phrase is, I am because you are, and I am because you were. It is that connectivity that makes us connected, makes us dependent on each other, that gives us definition, gives us reason, gives us purpose. So, in other words, the question we need to ask is, what is the equivalent of our 1619 project for Caribbean media? Now, some of us may declare, and probably correctly so, that many media houses over the years have highlighted some of the ills of society. But I would argue that media reflects the context in which it exists. What is, therefore, the obligation of the Caribbean media in the current development crisis that confronts us? That is the question that we are facing, is the question I hope we will deliberate on over the next couple of years, days, not years, and the answers and solutions that I hope you will come out of the next 2 days with as your action map. And as I was saying to SG, not only an action map for the next 3 years, but an action map that you will next year in Belize, Madam Coordinator, you will be able to say, what did we achieve? How much of the 3-year map have we advanced? And the year following that, what incremental change we have actually done. So let's just be clear on one particular point. It looks like we've lost the AC. The media landscape has evolved in my mind away from government-owned to mostly private-owned establishments. And that's a big change that has surely changed and will continue to change how the media behaves. And equally, the global economic, social, environmental, and political landscape has seen swift and intense shifts. In the last 3 years alone, the region has seen a global pandemic, economic shocks, and a struggle to return to the path of development goals and the resilient prosperity that we speak of. In fact, in small, vulnerable states, the Caribbean media are particularly important to support relief and recovery efforts, as well as disaster mitigation. But I fear the industry is not doing enough. Not doing enough to educate and inform its audiences on the various platforms that you have access to about the multiplicity of challenges that are and will continue to impact lives and livelihoods of the region going forward. So therefore, today, I'd like to ask each of you and collectively, what is the media's moonshot project that will attract our people and to be a call of action for behavioral change? That is what is required now to change the social psyche of the region. If the social psyche doesn't change, behaviors cannot change. If behaviors don't change, we can continue to implement new, as good policies as possible. We will not achieve development because it takes the entirety of the system to make change. And we have to mentally, psychically, almost spiritually embrace the change of who we are and what we are going to do, the vision we share, if we are going to make a change and a difference in the space that we want to call home in the region. And I want to elaborate on that framework that I've talked about, development, the need for it to be complete, the need to ensure that communications, the media, you are part of that policy as an integrated element to make development occur. And I want to illustrate that by appealing to two key things that I think are of interest and topical now. One is crime, and the other is a point that, President, you spoke of a little while ago, misinformation and disinformation. Because these are two areas that I think cries out now for support from the media. So, starting with crime, I call it the next climate change event of the region. We are sidestepping it. And if we sidestep it the same way we sidestepped climate change, we will suddenly find out, as the world has woken up to it, that climate change is alive and climate change is real. And the same will hold for crime and violence. If we allow it to fester and we allow it to take hold, and it has already different degrees in some countries, we will wake up and realize that we have another climate crisis. Although we won't be calling it a climate crisis, it will be a crime and violence crisis. And that will not be good for the development of the region, because it means there'll be a tension somewhere in the system, and anytime there is a tension, the definition of that system goes. I think by now everybody understands that. So, on any given day, I think it is the case that we would be hard-pressed not to find a chronicling of rising crime and violence. Just scour the newspapers, social media, radio. Not one day goes by without you see it. So what exactly is missing? Because clearly we are reporting it. We are reporting it. So what's missing is, in our view, greater analysis into the causes of these crimes and the ripple effects across other sectors of society. So I propose that we see violence not just as an opportunity to rush to social media, first with pictures and text. The usual concept my colleague tells me is, you use it in the media, if it bleeds, it leads. I think we all understand that. So the question we should be asking is, shouldn't the media share that responsibility of promoting social justice and thereby development by assisting in reducing the systemic tensions that arise from those social equities, in particular crime? Because crime is a reflection of the very social inequities that we talk about. And so when we ask for that clarion call to report with analysis, to report with information that can help and assist, as opposed to reporting just the crime or the blood that led in that report, that is putting the responsibility of social justice or reduction in social injustice, that responsibility squarely in the sight of the media. Again, Madam President, I want to task you to pull your membership. Greater analysis, greater information dissemination, with the one goal of providing an influencer, facilitating a change in social psyche, that we can turn the corner and not allow the next crisis to be crime becoming our next climate change crisis. So let's take a little closer look at this and consider the following. Small society, one hospital. Each gunshot victim stalls the level of care available to other patients. Why? Because the staff on duty in the emergency space needs to focus all of their resources to save the life of that patient. Doesn't matter whether they were the victim or the perpetrator, they will save the life of that patient. And at the same time, while they're doing that, because it's small, one hospital, patients with other injuries are triaged and put to wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. So those gunshot wounds and other victims of crime therefore increases the cost of health care, not only inconveniences, but puts at greater risk those other patients that could not get the care because staff are looking after those with the gunshot wounds. It constrains, because of the increased cost of healthcare, or the spending that government or the public sector could do on other things that could help reduce that social injustice that we speak of. And may also mean that citizens who have nothing to do with crime may end up having to pay more taxes to help support the health institutions and the higher costs that you're talking about. So, and I'm using this to make the point that although we think crime is not our business because we are not involved in crime, it has implications for all of us. And because it has implications for all of us, whether it means you or your grandmother or your Tante Merle cannot get to hospital because the staff in the small hospital are looking after a gunshot patient, or it means you have to pay more taxes, and you now say the government cannot do this to you, pay more taxes, but you need the health care. It has an impact on you. And therefore, it is our combined responsibility to see crime as a public issue. It's a public issue because it touches on all of our lives. But there's another aspect to this, which is gun crimes in particular make a general sense of safety. It impacts that general sense of safety for everybody. You are literally anxious of going outside if crime is pervasive. So at the business level, businesses close early because citizens clearly don't want to go and shop late. The staff that are working need to go home, and they cannot go too late for the very reason that, of course, there's crime around and they want to get there. But the fact that this is happening says, in aggregate, we are reducing productivity. It means the country is not producing as much as it ought to. And therefore, your GDP that we all talk about is less. But let's just see that one little thing we are talking about, whether it is 10 gunmen out of 200,000 people, that little group of 10 are causing mayhem across the entire society. People who like to go outside to exercise. Obviously, if there's a lot of crime and they don't feel safe, this drops. Now you might say, okay, no big deal, I'm going to stay home. But what's the knock-on effect of less outside activity? Is your physical activity goes down. Chances are, because of now the businesses not doing and maybe your agriculturists not being able to provide food, and people staying in closed spaces, poor eating habits, then we end up now with rising levels of chronic non-communicable diseases, all linked to that very issue of crime. And then there's a part we don't even talk about, which is the impact of lack of safety and the social cohesion that goes with that on the mental health of the people. We don't even bother to talk of the impact on the mental space of the peoples of the region. In fact, we only pay attention when we want to send them to the madhouse. But by then, it's already too late. They're already mad, okay? It is that cumulative effect that we need to start thinking about from the beginning. And so, let's me probably pause here because I've been painting a picture that says even if we are starting with crime, almost everything is connected to that, and it is bad. And I started by saying we should not do if it bleeds, it leads. So I'm not suggesting that we do not report on crime, okay? So let's get that clear. I'm not saying that. But what we are saying is that that reporting must be accompanied by more analysis of the issues so that citizens become more aware of what's driving those crimes and what work is being done by governments, civil society, to reduce or mitigate crime. In fact, we cannot become desensitized to rising crime rates because they are happening in your neighborhood or in the neighborhood. In fact, if we look at the narrative around crime, what it suggests is that many of the offenses that typically get to legal law enforcement happen in low-income communities, and drug-related retaliatory actions between crime factions. That is what the narrative is. But those low-income communities are what we called marginalized areas. The drug-related elements are equally inequities. And so if we cannot find ways of addressing those, and that can only come not by reporting, but by analysis and by active, intentional engagement to solve the issues at hand, then those remain, and if they remain, then we've already gone over this, it touches all of us. So, if we are not vigilant, I think we can say crime comes to all of our neighborhoods. Comes to all of our neighborhoods if we are not vigilant. And therefore, I want to make a statement which might be a little controversial. The police and the state cannot solve crime on their own. Why do I say that? Crime is not a phenomenon for someone else to tackle, but it is a phenomenon for all of us to tackle, because if we do not all tackle it, then it becomes a problem in all of our neighborhoods at some point in time. It may not be there today, it may not be tomorrow, but it is going to happen because it becomes embedded in society. And that is why I am putting such a premium on the role of the media. It cannot be reporting the number of crimes. You have to do that, but the why. What is being done? How do you mobilize, support? How do you get people, communities to recognize that they have a role to play in solving the crime problem as well, not just relying on the police or the government. It takes all in a community to change the crime situation and therefore generate social justice. So that's the first area I wanted to talk about. The second is misinformation and disinformation. An area I think that is truly, it has potential to set back our development. And it's an area that the media has enormous amount of leverage. The ubiquitous smartphone, with its capacity to create and send content, has changed our lives in ways that we could not have imagined 50 years ago. We saw it during COVID, where people believed information sent to them via voice note or information that they found online. Even if it sent them down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, they accepted those as gospel. The Public Media Alliance in 2022 published an action plan to combat misinformation and disinformation for Caribbean media workers. That study, conducted across 8 territories, highlights that the need for more regional research and analysis to combat disinformation, media literacy, and trust in the news media. The report, in fact, emphasized the need for a systematic media and information literacy awareness program, but more importantly, the necessity of collaboration by media houses to mitigate this scourge. In order to solve a problem, I think we need to first identify the issue and commit resources to put an end to it. At the bank, we have dubbed this measure better to target better, because you can only target something if you have a good understanding of what it is. What work is the media doing to reduce the misinformation and disinformation that is now part of our daily landscape? That's a question, again, Madam President. Are we taking this seriously enough? Too often, media houses are refuting this information with an audience that sees traditional media as not responding fast enough to issues arising in their communities. In the past, agencies like CANA have worked with media houses to distribute stories that were fact-checked and researched. Today, international newspapers have set up divisions dedicated to do this. But they equally have given audiences the alternative of voicing notes and video without context. And therefore, that proliferation of misinformation and disinformation continues. Equally, the President spoke about the development of artificial intelligence, which in fact makes the harnessing of misinformation and disinformation even more urgent, and clearly has implications for the future of the media industry. Forbes magazine in 2021 predicted that in the next 15 years, the majority of news will be written by AI bots. While I don't believe that AI will turn on humanity as the computer HAL tried to do in the film 2001: Space Odyssey, the Forbes column still makes for unsettling reading. In fact, Automated Insights indicates that computers and bots and AI can cover more than 13 baseball leagues and over 140 baseball teams and turn that information into AI linguistic analytic methods in a split second. And so the question really is, can we mobilize that type of information to help the media manage that information that we are saying is so critical to promote the social justice that we talk about? So I think the challenge is to harness that research capability and access that AI produces while using the human thought to engineer value addition to the output produced by AI, which in principle becomes a win-win situation. So it is not about saying, let's not embrace AI, but let's use AI to get us as much as we can, as quickly as we can, but now we need to use human ingenuity, analysis, and purpose to be able to add value to that which the AI can actually do. We also want to suggest that media houses begin to prepare not only their businesses, but the rest of the region for the impact of AI on industries, opportunities for upskilling to different areas, and to determine what tasks are best left for AI, such as research in digitized news libraries. You may ask, what about content? How are we going to manage that content that the AI systems can do? I think it is equally clear to most of you that across the region there are many reels of film, tapes, audio recordings, and newspapers that unfortunately are deteriorating as we speak because they are stored in poorly temperature-controlled rooms. And what is equally clear is that the machinery needed for playback is either obsolete or prohibitively expensive for one media house to purchase it. So the question we need to ask is, what should we be doing next? And to do that, I want you to imagine a region as a vast, meaning our region, as a vast digital archive that has recorded the social history of our region. a resource we believe that is now largely untouched. That can be a project for the next 10 years, turning all that we know, all that we have, into a vast digital archive of the Caribbean. Now imagine what we could do with this. The media houses can collaborate to digitize that resource, not individually, but together, the spirit of Ubuntu. And we can use that resource as a revenue generator, where for a small fee to each other, some with deeper pockets can pay more. That material now can be repurposed through AI to lend deeper context to stories, features, documentaries, and to widen the development narrative. In other words, we would genuinely be embracing the principle of knowledge creation. We accumulate knowledge, we then diagnose that knowledge, pulling out success factors and failure factors, and then transforming that discovery into transformative projects that can help change our development narrative, change our development trajectory. It is just a matter of recognizing, again, how do we manage knowledge? And so I want to summarize where we are and to end on a more positive note. It's quite clear to us that development is more than just activity. It's quite clear to us that development has to be around people. It's quite clear to us that people are the beginning and end of almost all inequities that exist. And it's clear to us that as long as inequities exist, and they will never be totally eliminated, but as long as the gap is sufficiently large, there will be tensions. And as long as there are tensions, development will not proceed. And therefore, a large part of addressing that problem means it has to be a holistic solution. And that holistic solution needs to be a joint responsibility of all. And that joint responsibility cannot ignore communication. And therefore, the communicators, the disseminators of information, the media, have a responsibility to help drive and influence that narrative if we are to make a dent in the development space. Okay, so that's the task I would like to be able to do. And so to close tonight, I want to maybe make an announcement, which I hope will help address this going forward. The effort we are saying to promote development communications as a tool of our development agenda has to be incentivized. It cannot just happen on its own. We have to incentivize it. I'm very much aware that the CBU, and we've already heard this as well from the President, CBU has zealously protected and driven the CBU Media Awards, incentivizing, to showcase the best reportage in the region by providing physical and monetary incentives to the region's journalists and media houses. So if I may therefore add that I believe we can leverage more to promote development communications, and I've already talked about this data analytic research, but now I'm referring to data analytic research on the role of the media in the lives of Caribbean people. If we can do that, then we give ourselves an even more reason, more purpose as to why you exist. So I propose, therefore, that we focus on driving quality, social justice-oriented, evidence-based knowledge products that can influence the social psyche of the peoples of the region. That is the task at hand that we need to transform and change. In fact, I think it is very clear that it is not by accident 3 regional institutions are all celebrating 50 years plus: CDB, CBU, and CARICOM. And I think that was done because at the time there was need to create those institutions to help fledgling development constructs. And so what I propose is that CBU seeks ways to forge progress in development communications along this research line that I spoke of, but in unison with other regional institutions that were tasked to help the development of the region. So in unison with CDB, in unison with CARICOM. That way you can form a triage of institutions focused on a mandate of development that would build upon what each other is doing. And so it is in that context and in that spirit that I want to offer what I called for when I spoke with you 2 years ago, a partnership with CBU. And so at that 52nd General Assembly, I indicated that the bank was eager to partner in providing training to upskill reporters, editors, and content creators to utilize digital channels more effectively for presenting development and financial data in engaging ways. The awareness, getting people excited about what you write, and being informative. At CDB, we have confidence in the work of the regional media, and we want to promote a stronger role for development communications. So over the past 8 months, our Basic Needs Trust Fund, which is an instrument at the bank, it has focused on increasing the visibility in the Caribbean, as well as developing a knowledge management and communication strategy to guide a sustainable approach to information sharing. So as part of this focus, the Basic Needs Trust Fund has engaged the CBU, and 2 things are about to happen. First is we are now sponsoring a category of the annual media awards. Except that we want it to be focused on the broader themes that we talked about in terms of promoting social justice, to help you address the issue, the charge that I have asked you to do. And so we are looking then for this quality, social justice-oriented, evidence-based research, reporting, information sharing that will touch on things like poverty alleviation, education, health, gender, and climate change. And I know we're already doing a lot of work in the climate change space. My good friend Dr. Young is here in that same space now, but we need to broaden it because climate change on its own is not sufficient. And we need to be able to run those across multiple platforms: print, TV, radio, and digital. The awards, if I can announce this, will be open to CBU members in the 20 countries that have a good reach of over almost 5 million persons. The sponsorship will be announced, I guess, tomorrow at the 2023 Media Awards and will culminate at the 2024 Media Awards ceremony. So Belize, you'll have the first honor of indicating who wins that first award. And what we hope is that the award would greatly increase media coverage and visibility on Basic Needs Trust Fund issues in all of the participating countries. The second thing that we are doing, separate from the award, is we want to disseminate content that is produced by the BNTF. As part of the visibility efforts, the BNTF has been focusing heavily on video production. In addition to sharing these videos on YouTube, social media, and traditional media, the BNTF will share those videos with CBU so that they can be made freely available to CBU membership for broadcast, to at least help you in your dissemination. And that should help broaden the scope of dissemination and visibility on all BNTF-related areas, as well as increase awareness of the social justice and development agenda. So that agreement with CBU is for 1 year initially, but I anticipate once we make progress, we can continue this. And we are also looking to develop other knowledge products with and for the CBU to disseminate on its share portal and to be able to share it at no charge to members of the CBU, such that you can therefore engage the audiences across the region in conversations on development and conversations about the future of our region. So we believe, therefore, in closing, that there is scope for supporting capacity building to help the media to develop a better understanding of the issues affecting development and to improve the reporting and analysis of those issues. The bank will continue to encourage increased reporting on the work of regional organizations with quality content that will foster greater cohesion within the Caribbean community. Together, let us build a brighter, socially just, and inclusive tomorrow. Thank you.
So a new award, ladies and gentlemen, and another round of applause for Dr. Jean Leon. So my producer in my invisible IFB is telling me that we're running out of time rapidly. So let's go quickly to Concordis, who is Director of Culture. He will serenade the audience. You will be amazed. Let me prepare you for an absolutely mellifluous presentation by Concordis, Director of Culture, and also the arranger for the 4P champions in the panorama in this country, the Hell's Gate Steel Orchestra. Over to Concordis. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful. What was it? I mean, that's out of this world amazing. Khan, you are a genius. I kid you not. Absolutely amazing. The pan aficionados are in full agreement that, yeah, we're going to put him in the Pan Hall of Fame, Minister Nicholas. All right, so that's Can Cordes with, by the way, if you're following that song, if you wanted to check on that song, it's Nobody Go Run Me by King Short Shirt. Powerful. All right, time now for our feature address this evening, and it will be another powerful presentation. You'd have heard, of course, our keynote presentation by Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon. Now it's time for our feature address by the Acting Prime Minister and Attorney General of this country, Honorable Steadroy Q.T. Benjamin. Honorable Steadroy Benjamin is the Attorney General of Antigua Barbuda. In addition, he holds the portfolios of Minister of Justice, Legal Affairs, Public Safety and Labor. Blessed with a charming personality, which by the way you'll see very shortly, a very sharp intellect which was first seen in his primary education, the Goodwill Academy. Mr. Benjamin completed his secondary education at the Antigua Grammar School. He then enrolled at the University of the West Indies, UWI, and attained a Bachelor's of Arts degree with honors in economics and history in 1974. He was named Student of the Year at UWI that year. His postgraduate studies took him to the United States and England, where he gained a diploma from the U.S. International Manpower Institute, as well as a diploma in law and the Polytechnic of Central London. And by the way, in terms of his role as Attorney General, as a member of the Honorable Society of Gray's Inn, qualified as a barrister at law when he attended the Council of Legal Education for Bar Final Examinations. He was called to the bar in 1980 for England and Wales. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Attorney General and Acting Prime Minister, Honorable Steadroy Q.T. Benjamin.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Nobody can run us from where we come from. King Short Shirt in Antigua and Barbuda, the great exponent of Calypso. Nobody can run me. Mr. Master of Ceremonies, kindly permit me to adopt the protocols established as I bring you greetings on behalf the government of Antigua and Barbuda on this auspicious occasion. I begin tonight by noting that Prime Minister Gaston Brown departed Antigua and Barbuda on Saturday for a period of 2 weeks. He regrets he's not able to be with us tonight. He has asked me to express a warm Antiguan welcome to delegations from all 19 countries who have converged from all over the Caribbean for this 54th CBU Annual General Assembly. In particular, I state emphatically that I'm most pleased to welcome delegations from Cuba, Colombia, I'm told, Curacao, Martinique, and the Virgin Islands. The Prime Minister wishes you the very best in your deliberations over the coming days. I say again, a very warm welcome to paradise. As the saying goes, you have not lived except you visit Antigua, where sun, sand, and sea make beauty. And under the Ministry of Legal Affairs, we also have now safety and security. Antigua and Barbuda, the first 2 letters in the alphabet, the 26, but the first 2, Antigua and Barbuda. We know some of our guests, I know, had challenges getting to our paradise. Such are the vagaries of transportation. I know I'm among you, media professionals, but I hope I will not be sent a bill for an advertisement if I put a plug for LIAT. LIAT, Leeward Island Air Transport. Long live this government's efforts to keep that airline in the air. While we move to expand its services, we can't survive, can we, in the sub-region without LIAT? It's a part of us. It's the bus of the Caribbean, the hip-hop on the islands, Leeward Islands Air Transport, LIAT. Join me, my friends. We're going to fight for LIAT. We're going to keep LIAT. We're going to bring back LIAT to make certain that they deal with transportation in the region. We are so sympathetic with you who had that sort of problem today. But we are so certain that your experiences here and your discussions will displace the memories of your traveling horrors and your travails. We need Liet. I'm plugging for Liet. Bobby Reese, I want Liet. We all want Liet. We will get back Liet. No doubt, my friends, you'll experience here not only the resplendent beauty of our Trinidad estate, but our vibrant culture, warm hospitality, delightful cuisine. And you will come to realize as well our efforts as a responsible and transparent government to protect and preserve the cherished freedoms of expression and of the media. We have always shown respect for the work of the fourth estate, and we know that journalism is the oxygen of democracy. We note the OACS slide from 55 to 93 in the most recent World Press Freedom Ranking for Reporters Without Borders. While I do not want to throw any of our sub-region colleagues under the bus, we are confident that Antigua and Barbuda's efforts have enhanced and not inhibited media freedoms. So to paraphrase the words of Shaggy, it certainly wasn't us. It certainly wasn't us. We also note the World's Press Freedom Report's sobering statements. The environment for journalism is bad, but in 7 out of 10 countries, and satisfactory in only 3 out of 10. We look at the family of journalists who have been killed while doing the job in some parts of the world. This cannot be our experience in the region, although we note the dastardly killings of 2 journalists in Haiti. My government condemns those malign actions of those involved in the attacks on the journalists. We all know, don't we, that journalists all across the region must see an attack as one attack on all, and we must continue to stand united against such perpetrators. We note that the Caribbean Broadcasting Union has 2 representatives on the World Broadcasting Union's News Committee, one of whom is my dear friend, our Master of Ceremony, Garfield Burford. And we hope this issue will continue to be the front and center of your deliberations. Ladies and gentlemen, being among so many media professionals today brings back my memory of my dealings with the media over the years. From hosting my own talk show program, Justice and the Law Anew, to providing commentary during our carnival festivities as an analyst at the cultural competitions. My very first experience with the media happened in and around the year 1967. As a young schoolboy attending Antigua Grammar School. Then, and we will remember, we had a program called Top of the Form. I was lucky enough to be one of those persons selected. But when I went to the studio, I froze. Every question asked me, I couldn't answer. The guy sitting beside me, my dear friend, kept poking me in the side. I kept on saying, if I don't know, I just don't know. In the final round, the teams were tied in the same points. The points were 10, if correct, 0. We had 5 points to win. Uncle Charlie, as he then was, posed this question to me. He said, how did Judas Iscariot die? I said, he hung himself. I didn't know how I got that, but I knew from Sunday school. I learned it from then. And that allowed my team to win that competition. Lo and behold, the next morning, my mate beside me went to school early, told all the guys, imagine, he said, if he doesn't know, he doesn't know. For weeks, I was being put through the mud by my colleagues. I was made fun of. I was joked of. 2 weeks ago, as I commentated at the competition, the Calypso competition, I saw somebody coming through the crowd, making his way up the station, up the stairs to where he sat. I recognized it was my friend for over 50 years ago who poked me in the side and said, "Answer." He came up the steps. He sat beside me. He removed my headpiece and he said, "If I don't know, I just don't know." He was a surgeon, heart surgeon, practicing in New York. He got up, walked down the steps, and disappeared. 50 years, if I don't know, I just don't know. So you see, that was my first experience with ZAL-TV back in the 1960s, with Uncle Charlie, top of the form. I can never, ever forget that experience. But you know, I know what I know tonight. Tonight, I know that the CBU was created by journalists of the Caribbean. I know tonight that the CBU fights for freedom of the press and fights to defend journalists in the Caribbean. I know, Madam President, that you're fighting a battle based upon the professor's last statement to make certain that journalism in the Caribbean remains at the top of the list. I know, Madam President, that you know, that I know, that you will fight. So I might not have known then, but I certainly know now. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have in Antigua and Barbuda not only talked the talk, but we have walked the walk. We have passed legislation progressively in the area of defamation, bringing legislation to bear that disaggregated libel and slander in line with modern jurisprudence. Section 6 of our Act does that. And I'm proud to say, my Prime Minister, Mr. Gaston Brown, in 2015, yes, less than 6 months after he won the elections, what did he do? We were the first country in this part to repeal criminal libel from the law. We were the first country to do that because we understood what it meant, Madam President, to give your journalists the right to write proper reports, to be professional in what they do, and therefore we shouldn't put any type of hindrance on the performance of their functions. The CBU is here to stay. It will grow. Today is the 54th celebration of what you've done over all of these years. My administration has ensured it makes itself available for probing questions from journalists. My colleague, Minister of Education, my Minister of Information, Nicholas, every Thursday morning, he submits himself to questions from journalists, reporting cabinet minutes, cabinet meetings, and probed he is. Questions firing from all shots, from RK-16s, from M21, you call them, all ammunition firing at him. And there he is, sweating. There he is dealing. And there he is answering to the people. Journalist. That's what we in Antigua and Barbuda care about. As the adage goes, we have faced the music. Even if that music comes in the form of incessant social media attacks at a time when cancel culture is the preferred route for some. But ladies and gentlemen, my administration, this administration, has therefore been keenly aware of the issues facing the media. The region's media is gathering here in Antigua not only at a time of increasing challenges to responsible journalism, but my friends, also at a time rich and ripe with promise and opportunity. Rapid advances in technology, including artificial intelligence, and increasingly intense competition for social media platforms, plus the potential rise of misinformation and disinformation, to which we refer to, hang like the sword of Damocles over media outlets. It is a world in flux, where nothing is as constant as change. However, I say, my friends, to you, to one and all, ladies and gentlemen, where there is adversity, there's always an opportunity. This, I say to you, my friends, is a time for innovation, transformation among all sectors, and the media is no different. I agree with Reporters Without Borders when it says the unprecedented ability to tamper with content is being used to undermine those who embody quality journalism and weaken journalism itself. My government, the Antigua and Barbuda government, under Gaston Brown, my Prime Minister, has provided the enabling environment for increasing digitalization, use of technology to transform business processes and make them more efficient. My encouragement to you today, my distinguished media professionals, is the Latin phrase, carpe diem, seize the day. As I close, and I close once only, I say to you, I wish you a successful and productive annual General Assembly, and I take this opportunity to congratulate those who will be inducted in the Hall of Fame. Long live the CBU and responsible journalism. Long may this union continue to grow. Antigua and Barbuda, Madam President, will be behind you, beside you, fighting the battle to preserve journalism in the Caribbean. Thank you very, very much.
We did say there was going to be charm, right? Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause, please, for the Attorney General and Acting Prime Minister. All right, we'll move very quickly on to the introduction of the Hall of Fame processes and criteria. There will be, of course, inductions into the Hall of Fame. That part of our program will be marshaled very quickly by Dr. Livingston White, who's a senior lecturer and currently the director of the Caribbean School of Media and Communications, CARIMAC, at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. Dr. White has over 25 years of experience as a consultant and conducting research and training for various local and regional Caribbean-based development and government agencies, including the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SEDEMA, as well as the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Turks and Caicos Islands Government, and the Ministry of Health Wellness in Jamaica. It's my pleasure now to welcome to the podium Dr. Livingston White to take you through this part of the program. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Mr. Burford. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the chair of the CBU's Hall of Fame selection panel, Vic Fernandez, and my co-member, Shida Balai, I am pleased to present the 2023 Hall of Fame inductees. To be eligible for the induction into the Caribbean Media Hall of Fame, the candidate must have attained outstanding achievements accumulated over a period of 20 or more years in categories related to service to media. These categories include presentation, production, engineering, marketing, or general management at the regional, national, and international levels. Other categories include policy formulation, planning and research, to refine media practice in the region, and advocacy to advance the cause of Caribbean media. This year, the Hall of Fame selection panel recognizes 2 awardees. To read the citation for the first awardee, please welcome the Chief Executive Officer of the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica and member of the CBU Board of Directors, Mr. Keith Campbell.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Una Maud Victoria Marson blazed a trail for a generation of women of color in media, becoming the first black woman to be employed by the BBC. The Caribbean Renaissance woman was a feminist, activist and writer, poet, playwright, and radio dramatist. Her literary, dramatic, and activist writing, together with her pioneering contribution to broadcasting, mark her as a truly international figure in 20th century history. Jamaican-born, Marson was the daughter of a Baptist parson and grew up in a rural middle-class environment. She demonstrated great intellect early in life, passing the Oxford and Cambridge Board Law Certificate in 1921. Her eagerness for further education led her to relocate to the capital, Kingston, to undertake social work training. But she soon after made her first foray into journalism, becoming Jamaica's first woman editor-publisher at the tender age of 21 at the monthly publication, The Jamaica Critic. 2 years later, in 1928, she established the Cosmopolitan Monthly magazine. This new entrant to the journalistic world of Jamaica eschewed the traditional female journalistic themes of social life, fashion, and homemaking. Instead, the Firebrand Journal focused on issues concerning women's economic, cultural status, while also publishing Jamaican poets at a time when this was rare, even in national newspapers. Throughout the 1930s, Marson's activism presently emphasized the connection between art and national struggle. Her involvement in the pre-World War II Jamaican life, including writing for the Daily Gleaner, the Jamaica Standard. She founded the Readers and Writers Club and Kingston Dramatic Club in 1937 and established the Jamaican Save the Children Fund in 1938. But she experienced predictable challenges in finding funding to support for her writing, and her first published collection of lyrical poetry, sonnets, and other miscellaneous poems, Tropic Reverts, in 1930, was self-financed. She found further outlets for her social commentary through the theater. Her works were considered scandalous because of their exploration of sexual politics in a patriarchal society and satire of colonial policy. Despite the censure of polite society, Marson's plays were staged both in Kingston and later London, at What Price, Ward Theatre, Kingston, 1932, and Scale Theatre, London, 1934, and London Calling, Ward Theatre in 1937. The strikes and protests that swept across the Caribbean in the late 1930s thrust Marsons back into Jamaica's intellectual scene. In her column in the Public Opinion, a weekly progressive paper, she flaunted her still sharp journalistic genius and reflected on her experiences of London life. In her articles, Marson also sought to encourage feminism, claiming the idea of feminism is not to make a woman more conscious of her sex, but to develop that within her which will make for a live, active, mental, and physical personality. Marson was one of a number of anti-colonial activists and intellectuals who moved to London during this period. During her first period of living in London, 1932 to 1936, where she initially lodged in Peckham, Marson joined the League of Colored Peoples, editing and contributing to poems to their journal, The Keys. She was a delegate to the 12th Congress of the International Alliance of Women for Suffrage and Legal Citizenship, a temporary collaborator to the League of Nations and staff member of the Ethiopian legation. But the classism, racism, and sexism which she experienced took a heavy emotional toll, leading to a breakdown which forced her to return to Jamaica. But even then, she was unable to suppress her desire to see an improvement in the status of Jamaicans, and she continued to stress the role of black women in the fight for freedom and socio-political change. During this period, her third poetry collection, The Moth and the Stars, 1937, was published. This collection was galvanized by her experience of living in London, both the racism she encountered and her engagement with Pan-Africanism. Her play, Pocomania, was also produced and presented at the legendary Ward Theatre in Kingston in 1938. The play represented a breakthrough in Jamaican theatre through exploring the relationship between African origin, religious ritual forms, and cosmopolitan, creolized, middle-class identities. Bolstered by her time at home in Jamaica, Morrison returned to London in 1938. There, she became a striking voice in broadcasting. She joined the team producing the pioneering BBC program Calling the West Indies, which first aired in 1939. The purpose of the program was to give West Indian soldiers in the British Army an opportunity to connect with family at home during the Second World War by reading letters on air to family at home in the Caribbean. Morrison evolved into the legendary Caribbean Voices that lasted from 1944 until 1958. The late Barbadian poet Camo Brathwaite described Caribbean Voices as the single most important literary catalyst for the Caribbean creative and critical writing in English. It is difficult to overstate the massive impact of those programs on how British society regarded the colonials who eagerly volunteered to support the mother country during the war effort and in helping to rebuild the bruised and battered institutions afterwards. While the BBC intent was to valorize the influence of the colonial masters on its dominions, Una Morrison, as host and producer, strategically and authentically represented West Indian diasporic black experiences and generated, through the broadcast media, an international platform for Caribbean literary arts and artists. In 1945, Morrison experienced further ill health and returned to Jamaica, the year her final volume of poems, Towards the Stars, was published. Through her activism in media and the arts, Una Morrison became an influential broadcaster, journalist, and poet whose living legacy can be found in the dynamic cadre of women of color from this region who have contributed so much to the development of the Caribbean society.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. In recognition of their induction into the Caribbean Media Hall of Fame, each inductee is presented with a scrolled citation and a plaque. To present the plaque for our first awardee, we invite Dr. Jean Leon, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, and Yvette Rowe, media researcher who has been exploring the work of Una Morrison with Dr. Anthony Frampton, will collect the award on behalf of the family. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege and pleasure to give the response to the citation for the induction into the CBU Hall of Fame of Una Marson. The citation outlined the work of Una Marson in her activism, literature, and broadcasting. Now, in recent times, there's been renewed interest in her legacy. The induction into the CBU Hall of Fame this evening is welcome and pertinent, coming as it does from the Caribbean and coming as it does from the CBU, an organization devoted to developing and sharing Caribbean media in the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to the Caribbean. Una Marson was a pioneering trans-border broadcaster operating in the 1940s, when the kind of self-determination in media that we know now could hardly have been imagined. Being the first, she took the risk of representing and bore the pressure of operating at a time when there were those who thought that she could not, simply because of her race, gender, and where she came from. But she silenced them with her broadcasts that brought Caribbean people to the microphone to speak to other Caribbean people. This induction into the Hall of Fame is a timely reminder of the work of Una Marson, a trailblazing broadcaster. Remembering her legacy is inspiring and reminds us that walking with our past can help us imagine the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe. We look forward to hearing you and Dr. Frampton speak more about the work of Una Marson during a session on Caribbean media stalwarts during the Conference Day program tomorrow. And now, for the second awardee, we invite Noel Wood to read the citation. Mr. Wood is Chief Executive Officer of Nation Group Barbados. Please welcome Mr. Wood.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Harold Hoyt was not just a journalist. He was a true pioneer and trailblazer in the field of journalism. His lifelong dedication to journalism and his contributions to the profession have had an indelible mark on the media landscape of Barbados and the wider Caribbean. His exceptional career spanned over 6 decades, and during that time, he established himself as a renowned journalist, editor, and leader in the industry. Hoyt began his illustrious career as a copy editor at the Advocate newspaper in Barbados in 1959, and he quickly rose through the ranks, demonstrating his talent for writing and editing and his unwavering commitment to the highest standards of journalistic ethics and professionalism. He went on to work as a freelance journalist at the Globe and Mail and Toronto Telegram in Canada. And during the years he spent in Canada, he attained a communications diploma from Centennial College and a business management diploma from Ryerson University. He also served as editor of the Contrast newspaper, where he showcased his unique style of journalism and his ability to bring to light issues of importance to the Caribbean community in Canada. He returned to Barbados in 1971 to become the editor of the Caribbean Contact, and in November 1973, he, along with some other Black Barbadians, co-founded the Nation newspaper, where Hoyt cemented his legacy as a journalistic giant. He served as the nation's first board chairman, editor-in-chief, and president. His leadership helped establish the newspaper, which turns 50 this year, as one of the most respected and influential newspapers in the region. Hoyt once said in an interview, quote, "It started really out of some sense of disappointment with the status quo at that time. I had just come back from living in Canada, I had the concept of giving Barbados a black newspaper because my experience in Canada made me racially conscious. And I started to look at the situation in Barbados, and there were certain things that needed to be redressed. So I came back with that notion, began to talk to people of like mind, and as we discussed it, I recognized that my concept of a black newspaper was not going to resonate in this country. But what could resonate would be a black-owned newspaper, unquote. He oversaw the newspaper's growth and development, where the nation became a platform for the faces and voices of the people of Barbados, providing a forum for public debate and discussion. The paper first started out as once a week, but was soon publishing twice a week. Once was not enough, according to Hoyt. And then finally, it was every day. Harold Hoyt was soon a household name in Barbados, and the baby he gave birth to quickly became a multi-headed giant, with the Daily Nation, Midweek Nation, Weekend Nation, Sunday Sun, and a host of other publications. Upon his retirement in 2009, he was named Editor Emeritus and Chairman of the Board of Directors of the newspaper. But Hoyt's commitment to journalism extended beyond his work at the Nation and did not stop at the borders of Barbados. He was a member of the Council of the University of the West Indies and shared his knowledge and expertise with the next generation of journalists, helping to shape the future of the profession in the region. Hoyt was admired as a legendary journalist, but in no time, he became known throughout the Caribbean as imaginative, bold, creative, and even a cultural icon due to his interest in the arts and support of artists in Barbados and beyond. He served on numerous national, Caribbean, and international councils and boards, including the Commonwealth Press Union, and as a director for the International Center for Journalists in Washington, D.C. He has received several awards, including the Maria Moore's Cable Citation from Columbia University for his contribution to Caribbean journalism. In 2005, he was conferred an honorary doctorate by the university, and his contributions to the island were also recognized, where he was bestowed with the Gold Crown of Merit by the Governor General of Barbados on behalf of Her Majesty. His love for writing went way beyond columns and political and human interest features. To coincide with Barbados' 50th independence anniversary in 2016, Hoyt authored Political Warriors of Barbados, Generals, Lieutenants, and Foot Soldiers. The book tells the stories of Barbadians who have had a political effect on the country. Other books followed: How to be a Bajan with a Night Dana, I Witnessed the Order and Disorder, and Celebrating the Unforgettables. Harold Hoyt's passing in May 2019 at the age of 77 marked the end of an era in Caribbean journalism, and his legacy lives on, and his contributions to the profession will continue to inspire and inform journalists for generations to come. In conclusion, Harold Hoyt's lifelong dedication to journalism and his contributions to the profession made him an outstanding candidate for induction into the CBU Hall of Fame. The CBU is pleased to welcome to the pantheon of media champions this journalist, editor, and leader in the industry who has, without a doubt, left an indelible mark on the media landscape of the entire Caribbean. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. We invite the Honorable Steadroy Benjamin, Attorney General and Acting Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, to present the plaque for our second awardee. Mrs. Noreen Hoyt will receive the presentation on behalf of her late husband, Harold Hoyt.
Wow, what a man. My only regret today, and I know you all would concur with me, is that he's not here to receive this. Thank you to CBU Board for honoring my husband with this award. It was humbling to receive the news that my husband was nominated for this award, which was only shadowed by the Win award. Since his passing, accolades and praises have come in from the Caribbean and around the world, unveiling the joyful selflessness and eager sacrifices he made to contribute positively to this industry and to other people's lives in and outside the press room. He made sacrifices that his children Bobby and Tracy and I now know he had to make to give his all to his work and his country. And I believe he is recognized today because we needed his generous contribution and effort. No one, even Harold, could not make it to this pinnacle of an award alone. There are people, countless people, events, and organizations getting him to this occasion. The Nation newspaper is one such organization where he properly made his mark and his decision to pursue a dream with a team and create a new story. I want to thank all those who contributed to making him who he was. I'm sure many of those already in this Hall of Fame have helped to shape that story, and therefore he is in good company. Harold, you made it to the summit of accolades, being recognized for your contribution by your peers in the Caribbean region. This posthumous award has moved you from was to now is in. A giant had fallen, but has now risen again through this Hall of Fame award and thereby immortalizing Harold Hoyt's name. Thank you very much and God bless.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoyt. Ladies and gentlemen, in recognizing media excellence of the past, the Hall of Fame selection panel of the CBU continues to inspire sustained excellence in the future of Caribbean media. Please, another round of applause to congratulate our 2023 Caribbean Media Hall of Fame inductees, Una Marson and Harold Hoyt. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Beckford, Mr. Burford.
Final round of applause, please, for the Hall of Fame inductees. Really powerful moment showing the depth and heft of our journalism field across the region and the stalwarts and the giants on whose shoulders we stand. Our time now for, are you ready to hear some good music? Who's ready to hear some good music? Okay, All right, perfect. We can deliver that. And here now for the finale, the 2023 Groovy Party Monarch winner for Antigua Barbuda, Claudette C.P. Peters. She is absolutely indomitable. She's irresistible. Over to Claudette C.P. Peters for the finale, and after which we'll have cocktails. Enjoy.
Hey! A pleasant good evening to everybody. Hey! 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 Clap! 'Cause I found myself a happy place. Only good vibes around me with my friends and family. So whoever sent you, tell them you not see me. You won't keep me down. You won't break my joy. And I tell them not you, na 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 na. Not you, na 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 na. Not you, na 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 na. Hey, 'cause I'm gonna have a good day today. Come on, get up, shut your lights. Come on, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up. And I tell them not you. Come on, stretch those legs. You've been singing for a while. Not you, na na. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I'm gonna have a good day today, today, today. Tell them bad mind people. Hey, hey. No matter what you do, you will never please them. So focus on life, make the right choice, ignore the voices. 'Cause you own the key to your door of happiness. Don't let negative people come take that from you. And I tell them, I want to see some dancing up in here. Come on. Come on, come on. Na, 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 na. 'Cause I'm gonna have a good day today, 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 today. Stay away, stay away. And I tell them not to, 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 not to. 'Cause I'm gonna have a good day today, 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 today. Stay away, 'cause I found myself a happy place. Only good vibes around me with my friends and family. So whoever sent you, tell them you not see me. You won't keep me down. You won't break my joy. Hey, my phone bill I paid. My gas bill I paid. My gas bill I paid. Doctor bill I handle that. My mortgage I paid. My clothes I paid for that. My ticket I paid. My children I handle that. Not you, not you, not you, not you. 'Cause I'm gonna have a day today, 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 today. Stay away, stay away. And I tell them not to, not to, not to, not to, not to, not to, not to. 'Cause I'm gonna have a day today, 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 today. Stay away, stay away. Ladies and gentlemen, continue to enjoy. Thank you. One yo, one yo yo, one yo, one yo yo, one yo, one yo yo, one yo 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 yo. Hey, one yo, one yo yo, one yo, one yo yo yo, one yo, one yo yo yo. Dang again, kid dang dang. Hey, one yo, one yo yo, one yo, one yo yo. Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. Another round of applause, please, finally, for the RT performers, Royal Police Force of Antigua Barbuda, Iron Band, and of course, Claude and C.P. Peters. Another round of applause, please. Final point to mention that let's also say a special greeting to some ambassadors, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Raquel Jacoba Yar, who is Dominican Republic's ambassador from Dominican Republic to Antigua Barbuda, Ambassador Anthony Liverpool, who is the Foreign Affairs Permanent Secretary, as well as Ambassador Carmen Velasquez de Visbal, Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic to Antigua Barbuda, as well as Ambassador Lionel Hurst, Chief of Staff in the Prime Minister's Office. And let me say a special greeting to Sonia Gill, who is the Secretary General. A round of applause, please, for Sonia Gill, Secretary General of the CBU. So just enough time for us to say, well, cocktails are ready. The hotel has prepared fantastic cocktails. Then they are saying, let's enjoy. So please, ladies and gentlemen, the cocktails are just outside the door. Thank you so much. And happy 54th AGA to the CBU. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
It is the season finale of Every